Good evening, and welcome back. Let the day you have carried set itself down now, quietly, the way a traveller lowers a heavy pack at the end of a long road and does not pick it up again until morning. There is nothing left tonight that needs your hands or your worry. The lamp may go low, the room may soften at its edges. Feel the weight of your body against whatever holds you, the mattress beneath you, the cool of the pillow, the covers settling like still water over the shape of you, and let your breath slow to the pace of someone who has nowhere else to be. Breathe in without hurry. Breathe out without effort. You are here, and here is enough. Nothing at all is asked of you in this hour but this, to breathe slowly and to let the light grow gentle. Tonight, our story belongs to ancient Egypt, to the long green valley of the Nile, and to a god with the head of a jackal, dark-eared and watchful, who stands beside a great balance and weighs the hearts of the dead. His name is Anubis, and his work is quiet, patient, exact. Do not brace yourself for it. This story will unfold slowly, the way the river itself moves, with no need to hurry toward its end. We have all the night we could wish for, so let us not rush. Let us cross into it the way one crosses into sleep, by small degrees, hardly noticing the moment we pass from one country into another. Get cozy, settle in, and let us begin. The walls of your room are already less certain than they were a moment ago. The corners have gone soft. The ceiling has lifted and thinned, and the darkness that remains is not empty, but warm. The warmth of a summer night in a place very far away and very long ago. And here, before we go further, a single question wishes to be spoken aloud, asked of no one in particular, left hanging in the dark like the first star over the river. When Anubis set a human heart against the feather of Mart, did the scale decide what a life had weighed, or only reveal a weight the heart had carried unspoken all along? Do not try to answer it. Let it rest in you, the way a stone rests at the bottom of a clear pool, visible, unhurried, waiting. We will return to it again and again, softly, until at the very end it opens of its own accord. For now, it is enough that it has been asked. Tonight, then, we will follow a long and gentle road. We will drift back across thousands of years to the valley of the Nile and step through a doorway the living do not usually pass. We will go down into the Duat, the realm beneath the world, with its rivers and its fields and its strange lakes of fire, and we will watch the sun itself journey through its 12 dark gates toward morning. We will stand on the west bank where the dead are carried, and at last we will come into the hall of judgment, where the jackal god waits beside his balance, where the Ibis scribe records what is found, and where a heart is measured against a single feather. All of that lies ahead, and all of it is calm. There is no hurry in any of it. Let us begin the journey by leaving this room behind. For now, remember this, that you do not have to travel far to arrive somewhere ancient. You have only to let go. Feel the bedroom walls growing thin around you, thin as papyrus held up to a lamp, until the light behind them is not the light of your own house, but the light of countless stars over a wide, dark land. The air changes, it grows dry and mild, scented faintly with silt and reed and the cool breath of moving water. Beneath you, where the mattress was, there is now the yielding softness of riverbank earth, and the covers over you have become the warm hush of a night, thousands of years gone. You have drifted back, without effort, to the valley of the Nile. Above you the sky is thick with stars, more than any city eye has ever seen, spilled from horizon to horizon, in a pale and endless river of their own. And below that starry river runs the true one, the Nile itself, moving quietly through the dark, wide and patient and old beyond reckoning. You can hear it if you are still, a low, continuous murmur, the sound of a great body of water going where it has always gone, north toward the sea, carrying the reflection of the stars upon its back. Reeds stand black against the shine of it. Somewhere a night-bird calls once and falls silent. This is the land the ancient Egyptians loved and feared and buried their dead beside, a narrow ribbon of green pressed between two deserts, kept alive by the flood and the sun. And it is here, somewhere ahead in the darkness, that there lies a doorway the living do not usually pass through. It is not a door of wood or stone. It is the threshold between the world of the breathing and the world of the dead, and on most nights it stays closed to those who still carry warmth in their limbs. But tonight it stands a little open for us, only for the space of a story, and we may step through it slowly, unhurried, the way one wades into calm water. Let us go toward it and see what lies beyond. In the beginning of every journey into that other country, there is a descent, and so it is for us. We do not fall, we sink gently, the way a leaf settles through still water, down past the roots of the reeds, down past the cool, dark earth of the riverbank, down beneath the world of the living entirely. And when the sinking ends, we are standing in the Duat, the realm of the dead, the great country beneath and beyond the world that the Egyptians pictured with such care and such tenderness that we can walk in it still. It is dark here, but not without shape. As the eyes of your mind adjust, the Duat reveals itself to be a whole country, strange and familiar at once. There are rivers here, as there are above, dark waters winding through the underworld. There are islands standing in those waters, and fields stretching away into shadow. Fields that the blessed dead were promised they might one day plough and harvest in peace. There are paths that wind between them and lakes lying still and black under a sunless sky. It is a mirror of the living valley, the Nile world turned inward and downward, so that a soul arriving here would find much that it knew and could name. Yet it is not only that. Threaded through this gentle mirror country are things no living valley holds. There are lakes of fire, wide and slow and terrible, that the unworthy dread, and the worthy pass by unharmed. There are high walls, and hidden turnings, and regions guarded and sealed. The Duat is beautiful, and it is grave, a place of fields, and also of fire, of rest, and also of testing. It is the stage upon which the whole drama of death is played out, the journey of the soul after the body has been laid down, and the judgment that waits at the journey's heart. And over all of it, as God and as King, presides one figure, Osiris, Lord of this land, whose green skin is the colour of new growth, and whose very being is the promise that what dies may yet be reborn. But the manner of his reign and the throne on which he sits are matters we will come to in their proper hour. It simply was this dark country in the mind of Egypt, as sure and as real as the fields above. And like the night sky, it did not lie empty and unchanging. It was crossed every single night by the greatest traveller of them all. For the Duat is not only the road of the dead, it is also the road of the sun. Let us watch, half dreaming, as that road divides itself and lights its lamps. The Egyptians pictured the Duat as divided by 12 great gates, and each gate was guarded, and each gate stood for 1 hour of the night. 12 gates, 12 hours, one for each division of the darkness between sunset and sunrise, and through them, from the first gate to the last, travelled Ra, the sun god himself. For the Egyptians did not believe the sun was simply extinguished at evening and rekindled at dawn by chance. They believed that when the sun sank in the west and the world went dark, Ra entered the Duat and began a long night journey through its 12 hours, passing gate after guarded gate, sailing his bark through the underworld river, until at the 12th and final gate he emerged again in the east, renewed, reborn, climbing once more into the morning sky. Watch it now, softly, without effort, the way you might watch a slow procession pass by candlelight. The sun going down in red and gold behind the western hills, the light failing, the first gate opening in the dark to receive the god of the sun and closing gently behind him. Then the second hour and its gate, and the third, each one a threshold, each one a station on the long descent toward the deepest hour of the night, and the long climb back up toward morning. Each gate has its name and its keeper, and Ra passes through them all, carried onward, never lost, always moving toward the dawn that waits at the end of the 12th. And here is the quiet marvel of it, the thought that the Egyptians laid at the very foundation of their hope. What the sun did each night, every soul might do as well. The sun sank into darkness and rose renewed, and so the pattern of Ra's nightly passage became the pattern for every human being who entered the Duat. To die was to go down into the west as the sun goes down. To be judged and found true was to travel the dark country as Ra travels it, from gate to gate, toward a rebirth as certain as the morning. Death, in this old and gentle vision, was not an ending but an hour of the night, 1 hour among 12, dark but not final. How steadying it must have been to lie down at last and believe that one was only following the sun. But before a soul could walk that road, it first had to be carried to its threshold, and to that crossing our path now turns. Good evening and welcome back to the shining surface of the world for a little while. Before we go down again, rise with me gently from the 12 dark gates and up through the cool earth, back to the living valley and the wide river under its stars. For the Duat did not lie only in some far, unreachable place. It touched the living world at certain points, and one of those points was the very edge of the Nile itself, the West Bank, where the land of the dead began. The Egyptians looked at their river and their sky and drew a simple, powerful line across the world. The sun rose in the east and set in the west, and so the west, the place where the light went down, became the land of the dead. On the west bank of the Nile they built their tombs and laid their beloved to rest, so that the dead lay always on the side of the sunset, always in the direction of the sun's own nightly descent into the Duat. To be buried in the west was to be laid down where the sun lies down, and to begin, like the sun, the journey through the dark toward renewal. The dead were even called by a gentle name that meant the Westerners, those who had gone to the side of the setting sun, and Osiris himself bore among his titles the name foremost of the Westerners, the first and greatest of all who had crossed to that farther shore. See it now, upon the dark and shining water, a funeral barge moving slowly across the river from the eastern side of the living toward the western side of the dead. It glides without haste, its reflection trembling beneath it, carrying a body wrapped and prepared toward its resting place in the west. And this crossing is no ordinary ferrying. It is made in the very image of Ra's own solar journey, the barge upon the water, mimicking the bark of the sun upon the river of the Duat, so that the dead one, even in being carried to the tomb, has already begun to follow the path of the sun. The living row the dead across the water as the god is rowed across the underworld, and the two journeys become, for that quiet hour, one and the same. And where the barge is bound in the rock of the western hills or beneath the sand, waits the burial chamber, and this too is more than it seems. The burial chamber is a touching point, a place where the world of the living and the world of the Duat lie quietly against one another, separated by no more than a breath. On one side of that thin place stand the living who have carried their dead as far as they are able to go. On the other side stretches the whole dark country we have already glimpsed, its rivers and its fields, its 12 gates, and its lakes of fire, and somewhere within it the hall where the balance stands ready and the jackal god waits. The chamber is the doorway between them, the last threshold of the living road and the first of the road below. For now, remember this, that the dead in this old faith were never thought to be simply gone. They were travellers who had crossed a river and passed through a door, following the sun into the west, beginning a journey that the living had prepared for with all their care and all their love. The body was laid in the chamber. The mourners turned back toward the light, and the one who had gone stood now at the edge of the great, dark country, ready to be led inward, deeper than the barge could ever go, toward the hall of judgment and the god who keeps the balance there. It is toward that hall and toward the jackal who waits within it that our path now gently turns. Good evening and welcome back, and let us draw close now to the one who has been waiting for us at the end of that road. For beyond the barge and the burial chamber, beyond the last threshold, where the living turned back toward the light, there stands a figure in the dimness of the great hall, patient as stone, and it is time at last to look upon his face. Upon the shoulders of a man there rises the dark head of a canine, long of muzzle and tall of ear, the head of the jackal, black as the rich silt of the river and black as the night through which the sun must pass. This is Anubis, the jackal-headed and the jackal-eared, the god of funerals and of judgment, the quiet keeper of the crossing we have followed all this while. He does not stride and he does not speak in the manner of loud kings. He waits. Beside him rises a great upright scale, its tall central post lifting toward the shadows of the ceiling, its two pans hanging empty and still, and the god stands beside it, the way a keeper stands beside a thing he has tended for uncounted ages. There is no anger in him, and no hunger. His task is neither to punish nor to pardon out of whim, but to conduct the dead into the hall, and to weigh the hearts of the dead upon the scale, and to see the truth measured out plainly for all the gods to read. He is the one who decides, by the honest weighing, who may pass onward into the fields of the afterlife, and who may not. He has done this for the countless souls who came before, and he will do it for the countless who are yet to come. And each one is met with the same steady patience, the same certainty that is not cruelty. There is a great gentleness in this if we look for it. The dead soul arrives frightened and alone, and it is met not by a torturer, but by a guide, a god whose long dark ears are turned always toward the coming of the newly dead, whose hands are practiced in the leading of travellers who do not know their road. To die in this old faith was not to be flung into chaos, but to be received by one who knew exactly what came next, and who had never once lost the thread of it. And so we may set aside our fear as we approach him, and simply watch, for a soul is coming to him now, out of the dark, and we would do well to learn its name before the weighing begins. In the beginning of this particular story, before there was a jackal waiting or a scale to be filled, there was a man who lived and worked upon the west bank of the river, and his name was Hunefer. He was a scribe, one of those learned men who kept the words of Egypt with reed and ink, who could read the sacred signs and set them down in their long and careful rows. His journey was painted long ago upon a papyrus made expressly to guide him, a scroll laid with him in his tomb, so that the pictures and the spells might walk beside his soul through everything that was to come. We know his crossing because his own book preserved it, image by image, the god and the scale and the waiting gods, all drawn in ordered lines, a map for a traveller who would need it in the dark. His life on the west bank has ended now. The reed is set down, the hands are stilled, the body wrapped and carried across the water and laid in its chamber, and the mourners have gone back to the sunlight. And so Hunefer comes, as every soul must come, alone and uncertain, into the shadowed country. All his learning, all the years of copied words and remembered spells, cannot tell him with any surety how the next hour will fall out. For the one thing a man cannot read in advance is the weight of his own heart. He has carried it all his life, felt it quicken and slow, but he has never once set it upon a scale against the truth, and he does not yet know how it will answer for him when the pans are filled. That not knowing walks with him now like a second shadow into the presence of the God who waits, and toward that God, step by uncertain step, he now is drawn. It simply was the way of things in that old and ordered world that no soul walked the last of the road unaccompanied. And so Anubis comes forward from beside the scale, and he takes Hunefer gently by the hand. See the gesture as the old papyrus drew it, the dark hand of the jackal god closing softly over the hand of the scribe, the way one leads a traveller who has come to a country he has never seen, whose paths he does not know, whose turnings might frighten him if he were left to find them alone. There is nothing rough in the taking. It is the touch of a guide, not a jailer, and it says, without a word, that the soul is expected here, that a place has been prepared, that the road ahead is known even if it is not known to the one who must walk it. There is no cruelty in the jackal-headed god, and this is the thing worth holding on to as we watch. There is only certainty, the deep and settled certainty of one who has done this 1,000,000 times and has never yet been lost. Hunefer cannot see where he is going, but the hand that holds his own has been there and back through every hour of every night, has walked the whole dark length of the Duat, and knows each stone of it. And so the scribe lets himself be led, as we all in the end must let ourselves be led, and together they move deeper into the underworld, past the shapes of things half seen in the gloom, toward the place at the heart of it, where the scales are kept. The god knows the way, the soul has only to follow. And follow he does deeper and deeper, until a light begins to grow ahead of them, the light of a great chamber where many are gathered, and it is into that chamber that they now are bound. For now, remember this, that the hall they enter is no common room. Anubis leads Hunefer across its threshold and into the Judgement Hall of the Duat, a solemn chamber set apart from all the wandering paths of the underworld, the one place toward which every road below at last must bend. Here the air is grave and still, and here the great deities of the dead are gathered together, each in his place, each with a part to play in the thing that is about to be done. It is not a court of noise and accusation, it is a court of measure, quiet as a temple at the deepest hour of the night, and the quiet is not empty but full, the way the air is full before a bell is struck. Look upon those who are gathered. There is Osiris, the enthroned king of the dead, the green-skinned lord, seated in his shrine, and we shall come to him more fully in his time. There is Thoth, the ibis-headed, the scribe of the gods, who stands ready with his reed and his palette to set down whatever the scale reveals, for nothing that happens here will go unrecorded. There is Horus, the falcon-headed, who has his own office in the ceremony to come, and there is Mart, the goddess of truth and of the right ordering of all things, she from whom the whole right takes its meaning, whose very name is the word for the balance of the world. Each of them waits in stillness, and none of them hurries, for the gods of this hall have all the ages of eternity in which to see one heart weighed rightly. At the center of them all, rising from the floor of the hall into the dim and holy air, stands the tall balance upon which Hunefer's fate will be measured. Everything in the chamber is arranged around it. The gods stand where they stand because of it. The scribe has been led all this dark way toward it. It is the still point about which the whole solemn gathering turns. And now that Hunefer stands before it, led by the patient hand of the jackal, there is nothing left to do but to look closely at the instrument itself and to understand what manner of thing it is that will decide him. Get cozy, settle in, and let us look upon the scale. It is a large, upright balance, a tall post standing straight as a pillar, and from its crossbar hang two broad pans upon their cords, level with one another, empty for the moment, waiting in a stillness so complete that they do not so much as tremble. There is a beauty in its plainness. It is not gilded or jewelled beyond reason, not made to overawe with splendour. It is made to tell the truth, and a thing made to tell the truth needs no ornament. It simply hangs there, perfectly poised, two pans and a beam and a post, and in that perfect poise is gathered all the weight of the world. For this is the scale of Mart, the instrument of truth and of cosmic order, the very balance by which the gods themselves keep the wide creation from tipping into chaos. Mart is the goddess of what is right and true and rightly ordered, and this balance is her measure made visible, the standard against which a life is laid. Into one pan, when the moment comes, will be set the heart of the dead, the whole record of a life carried in that single vessel. Into the other will be placed the feather of Mart, one single upright plume of ostrich, the token of truth itself, and the pans will settle and the beam will find its level or fail to find it, and by that plain and honest motion the fate of a soul will be spoken more clearly than any word could speak it. The heart against the feather, the life against the truth, weighed out in silence before the watching gods. Everything in the hall seems to hold its breath around it. Thoth stands with his reed poised above the papyrus. Mart waits beside her feather. Osiris looks on from his shrine, and the lesser powers of the Duat are hushed and still. Even Anubis, who has led so many to this place, stands now with a settled gravity beside the post of the balance, ready to lay his practiced hands upon it. Hunefer stands at the foot of the scale, his heart still beating within him, or seeming to, and the empty pans hang above him level and patient, asking nothing, promising nothing, waiting only to be filled. All the long road from the west bank of the river, all the crossing of the dark water and the passing of the 12 gates, all the leading by the jackal's gentle hand, has brought the scribe to this one still moment before the truth, and it is here, at the very foot of the scale of Maat, with the feather waiting in its dish and the heart waiting in the breast, that the weighing itself is about to begin. How a single heart may be lifted from a living breast and laid upon the pan of a god, and what it means for that heart to rise or fall against so slight a thing as a feather, is the mystery toward which our path now quietly turns. Get cozy, settle in, and let us begin the weighing itself, for the pans have hung empty long enough, and the moment has come to fill the first of them. Anubis, who has stood in his settled gravity beside the post of the balance, now turns toward Hunefer with the unhurried tenderness that has marked his every motion in this hall. He does not seize and he does not startle. He reaches instead with the slow certainty of one who has done this office through more years than there are grains of sand upon the western bank, and from the breast of the waiting scribe he draws out the one thing that must answer for the man. Not his hands, which laboured, not his eyes, which looked upon the world, not even his tongue, which shaped the words of a scribe across so many rolls of papyrus. It is the heart that Anubis lifts free, the small dark vessel that beat within Hunefer all the length of his living days, and it is the heart alone that must now be laid upon the scale. For in the understanding of this ancient land, the heart is not merely the engine of the blood, it is the seat of thought and of memory, the chamber in which every deed is stored, every kindness and every cruelty, every hour of gladness and every hour of shame. The mind of a person was believed to dwell here, in this beating centre, and not behind the brow, and so the heart remembers everything. It carries within itself the whole faithful record of a life, written not in ink, but in the very substance of the man, and it cannot be argued with, and it cannot be talked past. The tongue may plead, the tongue may soften a thing or leave a thing unsaid, but the heart keeps only what truly was. That is why it, and not the tongue, is called to testify. That is why Anubis lays it so carefully, with both dark hands cupped beneath it as one might carry water, into the waiting pan of the balance. The pan dips a little as it receives its burden, the cords drawing taut, the beam above swaying and then growing still. There the heart of Hunefer rests, alone upon the broad dish of the scale, exposed to the quiet gaze of every god in the hall. It looks so small a thing to hold a whole life within it, and yet the whole life is there, and the whole life will be measured. The one pan is filled now, and it hangs heavy with all that a man has been. But a scale requires two, and until the second pan is filled, the first can tell us nothing. What manner of thing could ever be set against the full weight of a human heart and hope to balance it, is the question that the empty dish across the beam now silently asks. For now, remember this, that the answer to that question is the lightest thing in all the wide creation. Into the opposite pan, across the swaying beam from the dark and heavy heart, there is set a single feather. It is an ostrich plume, tall and slender, standing upright in its dish, its fine barbs trembling faintly in the still air of the hall. It is the feather of Maat, the feather of truth, and there is no simpler nor more delicate token in all the treasuries of the gods. One might lift it upon a single breath. One might lose it in the smallest wind that stirs along the reeds of the river. It weighs to the hand as near to nothing as a made thing can weigh, and it is exactly this near nothingness that makes it the fittest measure of a soul. For the feather is the emblem of Maat herself, the goddess of truth and justice, of balance and of right order, she who holds the whole creation in its proper course and keeps the sun upon its path and the seasons in their turning. To live in accordance with Maat is to live lightly, cleanly, in balance with what is true, without the slow accumulation of the heavy things. Cruelty is heavy, falsehood is heavy. The wrong done and never set right sits in the heart like a stone, and stone upon stone a life may grow weighted beyond all lifting, but a life lived in rightness gathers no such stones. It stays light. It stays as light in the end as this single upright feather standing in its pan. And so the measure is set, and it is a strange and beautiful measure. Against this frail and floating thing, this plume that a child might blow across a courtyard, the whole gathered weight of a man must now be compared. All of Hunefer, all his years, all his doings, all that his heart has faithfully stored, laid in one pan and asked to prove itself no heavier than a feather. It seems, at first thought, an impossible thing, that flesh and memory and the long freight of a life could ever rise to meet so slight a token. And yet this is precisely what the scale of Maat exists to discover. The two pans hang now, both of them filled, the heart upon the one side and the feather upon the other, and between them the great beam waits to move. Which way it will lean, and by whose hand its leaning shall be read, is the still matter toward which our path now gently turns. Good evening and welcome back to the very centre of the tale, to the one still moment for which all the rest has been prelude. Anubis steps close now to the post of the balance and lays his dark hands upon the beam to steady it, and here we must watch him with care, for what he does and what he does not do is the whole meaning of this office. He steadies the beam. He does not press upon it. He reads the two pans as they settle, the heart upon the one and the feather upon the other, and he adjusts nothing, weights nothing, tips nothing by so much as a hair. His task is not to decide the outcome. His task is only to see it truly and to let it be seen. This is a thing worth dwelling upon in the quiet of the night, for it is the quiet heart of the whole story. The God of the dead is not the maker of the verdict. He is its faithful witness. He does not lean upon the scale to save a favoured soul, and he does not lean upon it to condemn one he mislikes, for he mislikes none and favours none, and comes to every heart with the same even and unhurried care. The weighing weighs itself, the heart sinks heavy, or it rises light according to what the heart truly is, according to the life truly lived, and there is nothing in the gift of any god to change that once the man has died and his deeds are done. Anubis only tends the balance. He holds the post steady, so that the truth may come to rest without hindrance, and then he reads what the truth has said. And so the hall grows stiller yet, if such a thing were possible, as the great beam finds its motion. The pans rock gently upon their cords, the heart swaying against the feather swaying against the heart. the beam dipping first this way and then that as it searches for its true and final level. No voice is raised, no hand reaches out to hasten it. Anubis stands with his fingers light upon the beam and his jackal's head bowed toward the pans, watching with the whole of his ancient attention as the scale does its silent and unarguable work. The fate of Hunefer is being spoken now, not in words, but in the slow and honest settling of two dishes toward their balance. It is being spoken, but it is not yet being kept. For a truth that is seen and then forgotten is no firm thing, and the gods of this hall do not leave their judgments to memory alone. Beside the scale there stands another, reed in hand, whose whole office is to make the passing moment permanent, and it is toward that patient scribe that our path now turns. It simply was the way of this hall from the first weighing to the last that nothing decided here should ever be left to drift or to be doubted afterward. And so, standing near the upright of the balance, there waits the ibis-headed one, Thoth, the scribe of the gods, the keeper of writing and of reckoning and of all exact and ordered knowledge. Upon his shoulders sits the long-beaked head of the ibis, that wading bird of the riverbanks, and in his hands he holds the tools of his sacred craft, the reed pen and the palette, the smooth roll of papyrus ready to receive whatever the scale shall say. He has recorded the weighing of hearts beyond all counting, and he stands now with the same untroubled readiness, waiting only for the beam to speak, so that he may write down what it has spoken. For it is Thoth who takes the record. As the balance finds its answer, as the heart of Hunefer settles at last against the feather of truth, and the beam comes to its final rest, Thoth bends his reed to the papyrus and sets the result down in clean and lasting marks. What was a fleeting motion of two dishes becomes now a fixed and written thing, entered into the account of the gods, true forever and beyond all changing. The verdict does not live in the mood of the hour. It is not warmed by mercy, nor chilled by anger. It is measured upon the scale, and it is recorded by the scribe, and between the measuring and the recording there is no room at all for whim to enter in. This is the deep comfort hidden within so solemn a scene. A soul is not judged by the temper of a god. A soul is judged by the truth of its own heart, weighed in the open and written down in full. There is a great and settling calm in this, the calm of a thing done rightly and done the same for all. The powerful and the humble, the scribe and the labourer, the one who ruled and the one who served, each comes to this same balance, and each has the same heart drawn forth, and the same feather set against it, and the same reed poised to record what the scale reveals. Thoth writes without favour, as Anubis weighs without favour, and the account he keeps is the same account he has always kept. The reed moves across the papyrus. The mark is made. The weighing of Hunefer passes from motion into memory, into the permanence of the written word. And yet, even as the verdict is set down, there is one more presence in this hall who has been waiting through all of it, crouched close beside the pans, patient as stone, for whom the writing of a heavy heart is not an ending, but the sounding of a summons. Who that waiting one is, and what office she keeps beside the scale, is the last matter we must look upon before the verdict itself is read. Good evening and welcome back, gently, to the shadowed place at the very foot of the balance, where the last of this hall's watchers has waited unmoving through the whole of the weighing. Crouched close beside the swaying pans, there rests a creature unlike the others, a composite of 3 of the most fearsome beasts that the river and its banks have ever borne. Her head is the head of a crocodile, long-jawed and cold-eyed, the ancient terror of the water. Her forequarters are the forequarters of a lion, deep-chested and strong, the terror of the open land. And her hindquarters are the hindquarters of the hippopotamus, vast and heavy, the terror of the reed-choked shallows. She is Ammit, whom the old spells name the devourer of the dead, and she waits beside the scale with her gaze fixed upon its motion, and her patience wholly undisturbed. Yet here we must be careful to understand her rightly, for she is not what a fearful heart might first take her to be. Ammit is not cruel. She is not wrathful. There is no malice in her at all, no hunger for suffering, no delight in ruin. She does not stalk the halls of the Duat seeking whom she might destroy, and she does not lean toward the scale to sway it, any more than Anubis or Thoth would. She simply waits. She is the consequence that waits, the plain and patient outcome that stands at the end of a heavy life, and she is no more malicious than the ground is malicious when a stone let go falls down to meet it. Her office is only to be there, crouched and ready, so that the verdict of the scale shall not be a mere word, but a real and final thing. For should the heart prove heavy, should it sink upon its pan and outweigh the feather of truth, laden with the stones of a life lived against Mart, then it is Ammit who receives it. The heavy heart is given over to her waiting jaws, and she devours it, and the soul to whom it belonged goes no further along the paths of the Duat, is not led to the green fields, is not presented to the enthroned Lord of the dead, but simply and forever ceases upon the road. This is the weight that hangs beneath the whole calm ceremony, the reason the weighing matters, the sober truth that gives the feather its meaning and the balance its gravity. Not punishment dealt in anger, but consequence come quietly home. Ammit does not hate the heavy heart. She merely ends it, as she was set there to do, and so the whole tableau stands complete before us in the dim and holy air. The heart of Hunefer rests upon the one pan and the feather of Mart upon the other. Anubis steadies the beam and reads its motion, adjusting nothing. Thoth stands ready with his reed to record whatever shall be shown. And Ammit crouches close beneath the scale, patient and hungry and without malice, the consequence that waits upon the outcome. Every office is filled, every watcher is in place, and the great beam moves now toward its final rest between the heart and the feather. Whether that dark heart shall sink into the jaws of the devourer or rise light as truth itself and open the road to the fields beyond is the very verdict that the settling scale is about to speak, and it is toward that trembling and decisive moment that our quiet path now turns. Good evening, and welcome back, softly, to the very lip of the moment toward which the whole rite has been bending. Here lies the quiet tension at the heart of all this weighing, the single hinge upon which everything turns, and it is worth pausing over before the beam comes to rest. The deceased may pass along the shining roads of the Duat only if his heart does not outweigh the feather of truth. That is the whole of the law, stated plainly, and yet the old spells did not all speak of it in the same words. In some tellings the heart must be lighter than the feather, must float upward upon its pan and let the little plume of Mart sink beneath it, a life so unburdened that even truth outweighs it. In other tellings the measure is stricter and stranger still. for there the heart must equal the feather exactly, neither heavier nor lighter, matched to the plume so precisely that the beam holds level and the two pans hang as one. Whichever way the old writings framed it, the meaning underneath was the same. The heart must not be heavy. It must not sink under the accumulated weight of a life lived against order, against balance, against the quiet law that Ma'at lays upon all things. And so Hunefer's heart trembles now upon the beam. It is a small thing to hold so vast a reckoning, this dark shape resting in the cradle of the pan, and yet within it is written every deed and every word of the man who once carried it, beating in his breast. The scribe stands very still, for there is nothing left for him to do. He cannot add to the pan and he cannot take away. He can only watch, as Anubis watches, as Thoth watches, as the crouching devourer watches, while the great balance decides between the weight of a life and the weight of truth. The beam quivers, the pans sway, the one against the other, seeking the place where they will settle. The whole hall waits in a silence deeper than sleep, to see which way the scale will lean, whether the heart will rise or sink. And that settling, so long approached and so long delayed, is the very thing our path now comes at last to look upon. For now, remember this, that the great moments of the old stories are quiet ones, and this is the quietest of them all. The pans of the balance drift toward their rest, slower and slower, the way a boat drifts to stillness upon calm water, when the oars are lifted and laid aside. And as they come to rest, the heart of Hunefer does not sink. It settles gently against the feather of Ma'at, and it holds, neither plunging down into the shadow where the devourer waits, nor betraying the man who once bore it, but holding level and true against the little upright plume of truth. The beam steadies, the pointer finds its center. The verdict is spoken not in thunder, not in any raised voice at all, but in the simple, unmoving stillness of a balance that has found its rest. And now, the ibis-headed one bends to his task. Thoth, scribe of the gods, keeper of the sacred writings, lowers his reed to the papyrus and records what the scale has shown. He writes that the heart of Hunefer has not been found wanting. He writes that the man has passed. The record is made in the changeless hand of the god of writing, and once it is written, it cannot be unwritten. For what Thoth sets down becomes a part of the eternal order of things. Beside the scale, the great crouching creature does not stir. Ammit, the devourer of the dead, keeps her patient place upon the floor of the hall, and her long jaws do not open, and she makes no motion toward the pan, for there is nothing here for her to receive. The danger that has hung beneath the whole ceremony, silent and enormous, now slides away like water draining back into the river, leaving no mark of its passing. The heart is returned to the one who owns it. The scribe who came trembling into this hall stands vindicated upon its floor, true of voice and true of heart, and permitted now to go on into the wide country of the afterlife that opens beyond the judgment. Yet a man does not walk that road alone, and the one who will take his hand for the next part of the journey is even now stepping forward out of the shrine light, and it is toward that new companion that our path now turns. Good evening, and welcome back, gently, to the moment when the frightened traveller is given a guide once more. From the direction of the great shrine at the hall's far end there comes a figure crowned with the head of a falcon, keen-eyed and still, moving with the unhurried grace of a god who has known both suffering and triumph, and has made his peace with each. This is Horus, the falcon-headed son of Osiris and of Isis, the avenger and the heir, and he comes now to receive the vindicated soul from the place of weighing. He does not speak in loud welcome. He does not need to. He simply comes to Hunefer, where the scribe stands beside the settled scale, and he reaches out and he takes the man by the hand. There is a quiet echo in that gesture, a rhyme laid across the whole of the night, for it was by the hand that Anubis first led Hunefer into this hall at the beginning, drawing the fearful newcomer across the threshold and toward the balance. The jackal-headed one led him to the test. Now the falcon-headed one leads him away from it, onward past the great scale and its watchers, toward the shrine and the throne of the king of the dead. The hand that guided him into judgment has given way to the hand that guides him out of it, and between those two hands the whole ordeal is held and finished. The traveller who came into this place as a trembling stranger, uncertain of his welcome and unsure of his fate, has become in the space of a single weighing a guest who is expected, an honoured one led forward by a god toward the highest presence in all the Duat. Step by measured step, Horus draws him from the balance, and the light ahead grows steadier and greener as they go, for the shrine they approach holds within it the still centre of the whole realm, and it is toward that enthroned figure that our slow path now moves. For now, remember this, that every long road in the old stories has an end that gives it meaning, and the road of the dead ends here, before a throne set within a shrine. Horus brings Hunefer forward and halts, and there before them, seated in the deep quiet of his sanctuary, is Osiris himself, the judge king of the dead, the Lord toward whom the entire journey has been bending since the first crossing of the threshold. He sits within his shrine as within a house of eternity, and everything about him speaks at once of death and of the life that rises out of death. From the waist downward he's wrapped in the white linen of a mummy, bound and swathed, as the dead are bound, still and sealed, given over to the tomb. And yet his skin, where it shows, is not the grey of death at all, but a deep and living green, the green of new shoots pushing up through the black soil after the river has risen and fallen, the green of growth and of return, of the seed that seems to die in the earth and then breaks upward into leaf. Upon his head he wears the tall Atef crown, that high white crown flanked on either side by an ostrich feather, rising above him, like a thing that reaches toward the light even here, in the deep places of the earth. In his crossed hands he holds the two emblems of his rule, the crook and the flail, the shepherd's curved staff that gathers and guides the flock, and the flail that threshes the grain, the tools of the tender and the harvester, the signs of one who both protects his people and separates the true from the chaff. He does not rise. He does not move. He is the still centre of the turning realm, the fixed point around which the 12 hours of the night revolve, the one who was slain and who lives, the personification of rebirth toward which the drifting soul has travelled through all the dark country of the Duat. To stand before him at last after the crossing and the weighing and the long walk from the balance is to stand at the destination of the dead. And yet even here, at the throne itself, the enthroned one is not alone, for a great company keeps the shrine about him, and it is toward those gathered guardians that our path now gently turns. It simply was the way of that eternal court, that the king of the dead should never sit in solitude, And so about the shrine of Osiris there stand the figures who share his long vigil. Close beside him wait two goddesses, sisters both, mourners and protectors, whose names sound through all the funerary spells of the Nile. There is Isis, the Great One, the devoted wife whose love gathered the scattered lord and called him back from death. And there beside her is Nephthys, her sister, keeper of the household of the dead, and together they stand at the shrine as they have always stood, the two who watch over the body and the two who welcome the vindicated soul. Their presence steadies the whole tableau, for where they are there is protection, and there is grief transformed into guardianship, and there is the promise that the one who has passed the scale will be tended as tenderly as their own lord was tended. And near the goddesses there are four more, small and solemn, the four sons of Horus, the guardians of the dead, whose care is given to the body and its keeping. They stand ranged before the shrine as watchers set at their posts, each with his charge, each faithful to his office, four quiet sentinels of the eternal order. Into this gathered company, Hunefer is now brought and now takes his place, no longer a stranger at the threshold, no longer a trembling figure beside the swaying pans, but one accepted at last among those who have crossed safely through the judgment and come to rest before the throne. He stands among gods and guardians as one who belongs there, true of heart, true of voice, received into the deep peace of the shrine. The whole long descent has come to its stillness here, and the journey that began in fear has ended in welcome. Yet the meaning of all we have watched this night, the reason the jackal-headed one keeps his patient watch over every heart that comes, and the quiet answer to the question with which we began, remains still to be gathered and spoken. And it is toward that final reflection that our path now softly turns. For now, remember this, and hold it lightly, as the balance itself holds its two pans. When Hunefer knelt beside the great upright scale and the jackal-headed one bent to his work, Anubis did not lay his own hand upon the heart to weigh it down, nor did he lift a finger to spare it. He added nothing. He took nothing away. He set the heart in its pan and the single upright feather of Mut in the other, and then he did the one thing that is the whole of his office in that hall. He let the heart show its own weight. That is all. The feather did not accuse. The feather did not condemn. The feather only stood there, straight and pale and impossibly light, the measure of truth and of right order, and against that quiet measure the heart declared itself, as a stone declares itself when it is laid upon the water and either floats or sinks. The scale revealed, it did not invent. And so the great fear that the living carry down into the dark, the fear that some stranger's judgment will fall upon them from outside, that some cold god will reach in and find them wanting by a standard they were never told, that fear softens and settles when one watches the weighing closely. For the heart that Hunefer carried into the hall was his own heart, the very heart that had beaten in him through all his years upon the west bank and the east, the heart that had kept the record of every kindness and every turning away, faithfully, in silence, without his ever needing to command it. He did not receive his answer at the balance. He brought his answer with him. It had ridden with him down through the 12 gates and across the dark water, folded quietly within his breast, and the scale merely opened what was already sealed there, and let its truth be seen at last in the light of that solemn court. The lightness of the heart was not a gift bestowed in the hall. It was a thing grown slowly over a lifetime, leaf by leaf, as the green comes up through the black soil and carried down at the end into the place where it could finally be shown. There is a deep gentleness in this, though it wears a solemn face, for it means that nothing in the weighing is arbitrary, and nothing is cruel, and nothing is hidden that was not first placed there by the one who is weighed. The jackal-headed watcher is not a tormentor waiting to catch the unwary. He is a keeper of the scale who will not let it lie, who steadies the beam so that neither hope nor terror can tip it falsely, who asks only that the truth be permitted to appear. What the balance revealed of Hunefer, it revealed because it was already true of him, and it is toward that quiet and continuing truth, retraced now from the beginning, that our path softly turns. Good evening and welcome back, and let us walk the whole road once more, gently, the way one counts a string of beads in the dark, touching each in turn, and letting it fall, asking nothing of it but that it be there. In the beginning of the journey there was the sinking of the sun into the west, and the west bank of the Nile lying under the low light as the land of the dead, and the funeral barge upon the black water carrying the one who had died in the manner of Ra himself, who sinks each evening only to be reborn. There was the descent then, down out of the burial chamber that is the touching place of the living world and the hidden one, down into the Duat, that vast country beneath the earth, with its rivers and its islands, its fields and its paths, its still lakes and its lakes of fire, its long walls and its guarded ways. And there were the gates, the 12 gates of the night, one for each dark hour, each with its keeper and its name, each opening only to the soul who came in truth and in the proper order, so that the passage through them was itself the slow measure of the night, wearing away toward dawn. Past the gates the traveller came at last into the hall, and there stood Anubis, jackal-headed, dark of face and steady of hand. And he took the deceased by the hand as one takes a child who has walked a long way and is tired, and he led him forward to the balance. Touch that bead and let it fall. There was the great upright scale and the heart set in one pan, and the single feather of Mart set upright in the other, and the slow settling of the beam as the truth came quietly into view. There beside the scale stood Thoth, ibis-headed, scribe of the gods, with his reed and his palette, writing down what the balance showed, neither hurrying nor hesitating, setting the verdict into the eternal record so that it might stand forever. And there, crouched patiently at the foot of the scale, waited Ammit the devourer, that composite creature with the head of the crocodile, the forepart of the lion, and the heavy hindquarters of the hippopotamus, waiting without hunger and without malice, simply waiting as the shadow waits beside the lamp for whatever the weighing would give her. For the heart that failed, she was the ending, and for the heart that held true, she was only a shape in the corner, unneeded, at rest. Touch that bead and let it fall. And when the heart of Hunefer was shown to be true, light against the feather, right against the measure of Mart, there came falcon-headed Horus, the avenging sun, the living king, and he took the vindicated soul by the hand where Anubis had let go, and he led him onward, out of the hall of the balance and toward the shrine at the heart of the realm. There sat Osiris, green-skinned and still, wrapped at the legs in the mummy's gauze, crowned with the tall atef and its 2 feathers, holding the crook and the flail crossed upon his breast, flanked by Isis and by Nephthys and watched over by the 4 solemn sons of Horus. And into that gathered company, Hunefer was brought and given his place, received and welcomed, true of heart and true of voice, come home at last to the deep peace of the shrine. The story stands complete now, every bead counted, every step touched and let fall, whole and calm and at rest. And yet before we too let this night go and turn back toward the waking world, there is one last gathering to be made, one final quiet word to speak over all that we have watched, and it is toward that closing reflection that our path now softly turns. Good evening and welcome back, one last time, for the story has come to its stillness and only the meaning remains to be gathered. At the very beginning we set a quiet question adrift, of no one in particular asking what the jackal-headed god of the dead truly guards, and why his shadowed realm should be a place of order rather than a place of horror. We have our answer now, and it is a gentle one. Anubis guards the truth of the heart. He guards the balance that will not lie. He does not stand at the threshold of the Duat to frighten the dying or to invent their doom, but to see that each soul is met by nothing harsher and nothing kinder than its own long life, weighed fairly against the feather of what is right. His realm is order because it is honest, and it is honest because at its center stands a scale that adds nothing and hides nothing, tended by a keeper who wants only that the truth be shown. The horror the living imagine dissolves in that hall into something closer to mercy, for to be weighed truly is also to be known truly, and to be known is the beginning of being welcomed home. That is what the scale revealed, and that is why the dark country beneath the earth is, in the end, a country of peace and of return, where the sun that sinks in the west is reborn in the east, and the seed that seems to die breaks upward at last into green. For now, remember this, and let the names settle softly one final time, like lamps set out along a quiet path. Remember Anubis, jackal-headed, keeper of the balance, who takes the dead by the hand. Remember Mart, whose single upright feather is the measure of all the truth. Remember Thoth, the ibis-headed scribe, who writes the verdict into the eternal record. Remember Ammit, the patient devourer, who is only a shadow in the corner for the heart that holds true. Remember Horus, falcon-headed, who leads the vindicated soul onward. Remember Isis and Nephthys, the 2 watching sisters, and the 4 solemn sons of Horus who keep the shrine. And remember Osiris, green-skinned and still, crowned with the atef, holding the crook and the flail, the slain one who lives, the Lord toward whom the whole long journey of the night has quietly moved. Remember the 12 gates, and the dark water, and the funeral barge, and the west bank lying under the low sun. Hold them lightly now, and then let even these gentle names loosen and drift, for the night has done its work, and the story asks nothing more of you than rest. Imagine the dark country of the Duat, far behind you now, its 12 guarded gates, and its deep silence no longer pressing on your thoughts. In your mind, reach back and close an invisible door to that hidden realm, feeling it move on silent hinges, sealing the weighing of every heart in calm and order.